Hi, this is Dan Sussman, and we are here with part two of my presentation on persuasive writing. And if you haven't done so yet, I strongly recommend that you take a look at part one, which will give you a good introduction to the topic. In part two, we're going to build upon what we've discussed in part one by showing you how to take your persuasive paragraphs, expand them, add detail, and turn them into full-blown persuasive essays, multi-paragraph. All right, here's what we know so far. If you've paid attention to the first part of this presentation, you already know that persuasive writing is intended to convince the reader of the writer's point of view. A good persuasive paragraph or composition can be informative. It can be about a serious subject or a light subject, but first and foremost, the object is to try to convince the reader to come around to your way of thinking. And like any good composition, a piece of persuasive writing consists of an introduction. That's where you state your position. The body, where you make your arguments that support that position. So in a paragraph, your introduction is probably going to be your topic sentence. In your body, all the supporting statements that tie back to that topic sentence. And your conclusion is where you're going to restate your belief and then include any closing thoughts that you might have. As I mentioned at the outset, we're now going to expand that persuasive paragraph into a persuasive essay. The basic structure is the same. We still have an introduction. We still have supporting points in the body, including a refutation, and we'll get to that. And there's still a conclusion in which we bring the composition to a logical close. But there are some differences. First of all, instead of putting all of the information in one paragraph, you're going to be writing multiple paragraphs, and they're going to contain much more detailed information about the points that you want to make. Your supports, for the most part, are going to be expanded, and we'll see how to do that shortly. Also, in many of the compositions you have already written, undoubtedly your topic sentence is the first sentence in the composition. But as I've told my students in class, the topic sentence is not always the first sentence of the first paragraph. And we're going to turn things around a little bit in this format that I'm going to give you for the essay version of persuasive writing, in that we are going to put the topic sentence at the end of the introduction, not the beginning. You'll see how we do that. Each of your arguments in the body will have its own paragraph. So, as I said, you're going to expand each of these points with two or more sentences. They will stand alone as individual paragraphs. And finally, your conclusion may include a call to action, and we'll discuss that in a few moments. So let's move ahead here. All right, in the introduction, when we did the paragraph, the persuasive paragraph, your introduction was limited to one sentence in which you stated your position. And here are some examples. I believe students in public schools should be required to wear uniforms. I do not think that education officials should close public schools whose students perform badly on standardized tests, and so on and so forth. Now, in the essay, you're going to expand on the points that you made in the paragraph. You're going to start your introduction not with the topic sentence. You're going to use some background or a hook that will grab the audience's attention before you state your belief. I like to call this setting the table. You're going to get the audience or your readers ready for what you're going to say. So, in the first version of this presentation, I did an essay, or rather a paragraph, in which I stated that I strongly believe that more people in Phoenix should use bicycles to get from place to place. That was my introduction. One sentence. But for a persuasive essay on the same subject, I'm going to expand that introduction to a full paragraph. Here's an example. Bicycles have been with us since the late 19th century, and they're a popular mode of transportation around the world. In the United States, there's been a burst of interest in bicycles in recent years, and many cities around the country have become bicycle-friendly by setting aside safe bicycle lanes on streets, increasing public awareness of cyclists, and taking other steps. Our city should do the same. I strongly believe that more people in Phoenix should use bicycles to get from place to place. So, if we look at the first part of this paragraph, and admittedly, a couple of these sentences could be shortened somewhat, but I tell you a little bit about bicycles and a little bit of what's going on around the United States to make cities more bicycle friendly. I've set the table for what I want to say. In my opinion, finally, the last sentence of the paragraph is my topic sentence. That's where I tell you what my belief is. Everything else in this composition is going to be related to that sentence in blue. I strongly believe that more people in Phoenix should use bicycles to get from place to place. All right. I'm not going to read these out loud. I'll give you a few moments to read this on your own. But here are the sentences that made up the body of the persuasive paragraph. I basically made 3 points to argue for more use of bikes in Phoenix. First, second, third, and then I also have my refutation. Some people might argue that bikes are impractical for carrying packages and other loads, and so on and so forth. The entire body in just a few sentences. But here too, we are going to expand each of these points into separate paragraphs. Let's take argument 1. First, bicycles are powered by the rider's muscles, so they do not create air pollution. Imagine that you say this to somebody you're trying to convince of your point of view, and the person comes back to you and says, that's interesting. Tell me more. Well, Phoenix is covered by a brown cloud of pollution in the winter, which is unsightly and makes it difficult for some people to breathe. By relying on bicycles more and cars less, we may be able to get rid of some of this air pollution. So, I have taken the point that I made in the first sentence and I've expanded upon it. I've told you more, and I've turned those 3 sentences into a separate paragraph. There's the original sentence, and there's the new supporting detail. Argument 2. I said, second, increased use of bicycles would reduce our reliance on gasoline. But again, here, I expand upon that point. We know that the world's supply of petroleum is limited, so it makes sense to use it wisely. By riding bicycles instead of cars for some trips, we can preserve fuel for other purposes. So here too, I've written enough to make argument 2 its own paragraph. Then on to argument 3. My original sentence, finally, bicycling is extremely good exercise, and then I expanded upon it again. Numerous studies have shown that cycling, there should be no "it" there, that cycling improves the strength of riders' legs and back muscles. In addition, bicycling improves cardiovascular fitness. While it's possible to get those benefits through running, bicycling is gentler motion and is much less likely than running to cause joint damage. Okay, and there's my argument 3. And again, separate paragraph. Now my refutation. As you may remember, what the refutation is an acknowledgement that not everybody feels the way I do, that there is another side to the question. So what you do is you state your opponent's argument and then you knock it down. So the original sentence: some people might argue that bicycles are impractical for carrying packages and other loads, but by adding racks, baskets, and panniers to bikes, people would be amazed how much they can carry on these wonderful two-wheeled vehicles. And then I expand, perhaps a little more. True, it might not be possible to use bicycles for all chores, but before climbing into their cars, people ought to consider whether they can accomplish the task using their bicycles. This is the way to establish bicycling as a habit. So I've cited what my opponent's argument might be, and then I knock it down. Again, in a separate paragraph. That brings us to the conclusion. Now, up until this point with persuasive essays, we've basically restated our main point, our topic, and closed it up. When you expand upon a persuasive essay, you might want to include a call to action. Basically, many persuasive writing pieces, we're trying to convince somebody to do something, to further our cause by taking some action, and that is known as the call to action. So, my original conclusion sentence was, as you can see, bicycling yields benefits to riders' health and the environment, so greater dependence on them in Phoenix only makes sense. But then I close out with a call to action. However, Phoenix won't become a more bicycle-friendly city until the streets are filled with cyclists. I urge you to get on your bicycle today in order to be seen and to encourage others to do the same. Don't just sit there, do something. That's your call to action. So let's summarize what we've learned about expanding persuasive paragraphs into full-blown persuasive essays. To expand a persuasive paragraph to an essay, we take each point in the introduction, body, and conclusion, and we turn them into separate paragraphs. The expansion consists of additional supporting detail for each point that you make. And one way to expand the conclusion is by including a call to action in which you encourage readers to do something in support of the position you're recommending.